Joanne.
I am Juanita.
And you're students of Ghana Christian International High School. And we urge you all to subscribe to His Love TV. Thank you. Bye.
Hello there, you are welcome to His Gov TV. In today's discussion, we will be looking at the death of Saul, and we shall take our Bible text or Bible reading from 1 Samuel chapter 31, verse 1 to 13. Should in case today is your first time of visiting our channel, we are into the teaching of history, government, and CRS, and also we visit historical sites, and also we solve some WhatsApp questions, and also promote African culture as well. So if you like this contents, kindly subscribe to our channel. So in our previous discussion on CRS, we looked at the disobedience of Saul, and we saw how Saul, or King Saul, disobeyed God when he was supposed to have utterly destroyed the Amalekites. But we saw that, or we read from the Bible, that Saul did not utterly destroy all the Amalekites. However, he left the fatlings as well as their king, Agag. And because of that, God told Samuel to go and inform Saul about the consequences of what he had done. Of course, the consequences of his disobedience. And so today we will look at one of the consequences of his disobedience. And one of the consequences of Saul's disobedience was that he died in a battle, and then also his 3 sons also died. And so today we are looking specifically at the death of Saul, how he died. And he died because of the disobedience that he committed in his battle with the Amalekites. Good. So let's go and look at our lesson objectives for today. So our lesson objectives for today is very simple. That by the end of this lesson, you should be able to describe the death of King Saul, and this you can be asked in your WASI exams to describe the death of Saul, how King Saul died, and basically that is what we would look at, or we are about to look at. Okay, so let's take our lesson, our Bible reading. So we'll go into the Bible, and I recommend that you use the RSV Bible. Don't use any Bible apart from the RSV. If you don't have the RSV Bible, I would show you a screen of my Bible so that we can all read together and take notes of how King Saul died. So let's open our Bible to 1 Samuel chapter 31, verse 1 to 13. And then after the reading, we will have a summary of the text. Okay, so now let's take a look at the death of Saul, how King Saul died. And we will take our Bible text from 1 Samuel chapter 31, verse 1 to 13. And basically, we pay attention to the death of Saul. So let's begin with our reading. Now the Philistines fought against Israel, and the men of Israel fled before the Philistines and fell slain on Mount Gilboa. So the Philistines had a war with the people of Israel, and it looks as if in that war the Israelites were being defeated. And so the soldiers had to be running away. A lot of them were dying on Mount Gilboa. Now, and the Philistines overtook Saul and his sons, and the Philistines slew Jonathan and Abinadab and Malchishua, the sons of Saul. So, of course, if Israel is losing the battle, the army commander, the king, would also be in kind of crisis. And so since his soldiers were running away, the Philistines were able to take hold of Saul and then they arrested Saul, and then they killed 3 of his sons on that day. And these 3 sons were Jonathan, Abinadab, and Malchishua. So these 3 sons were killed on that day. Now the battle pressed up hard upon Saul, and the archers found him, and he was badly wounded by the archers. So you know the archers, those who normally use bow and arrow to fight. So that's what we call the archers. And Saul was badly wounded in that battle with the Philistines. Then Saul said to his armor bearer, "Draw your sword and thrust me through with it, lest these uncircumcised come and thrust me through and make sport of me." But his armor bearer would not, for he feared greatly. Therefore Saul took his own sword and fell upon it. So Saul realized that he was badly wounded, and so he called his armor bearer, the one who carries his war tools, and so he asked the armor bearer to kill him, to just cut the suffering, to kill him. But his armor bearer decided not to do so because he feared. I don't think that if your master or your teacher or somebody that you are serving ask you to kill him, I don't think you would be gladly. You would do that gladly. And so the armor bearer feared, so he did not do that. And so Saul then decided to kill or take his own life. Now the reason was that he didn't want the uncircumcised men, meaning the unclean men over here. So the Philistines, of course, if you were not an Israelite, you were considered as what? Unclean. And so here, the unclean, the uncircumcised means the unclean people will come and kill him and make sport of him, make sport of him, whereby they will go and hang the body somewhere and then, display the body for people to see. So Saul didn't want that to happen. And so he killed himself. I don't know what you make of Saul's actions. If you were Saul, what would you have done? Would you have taken your own life, or you would have waited for your enemies to come and capture you? So let's continue reading verse 5. And when his armor bearer saw that Saul was dead, he also fell upon his sword and died with him. And that's the loyalty of a good servant. He died with his master. Because if your master is dead, there is no, I don't see, in those days, there was no need to live, especially if you are serving a king, and even in our African, background or in our African setting, this whole thing was there. When a king died, they would normally kill some of the slaves or the servants of the king to accompany him. And so what the armor bearer did was just exactly what was supposed to be done. He also killed himself because he couldn't take it. That Saul died, and his 3 sons, and his armor bearer, and all his men on the same day together. So they lost the war. Down 0. They lost it. Everybody, all his men. Look at all his men, all the soldiers that he took died. His armor bearer died, and 3 sons died. He himself also died. And don't forget, this was already prophesied by God because of the disobedience that Saul showed in his dealing with the Amalekites. All right. Now, verse 7. And when the men of Israel were on the other side of the valley, and those beyond the Jordan saw that the men of Israel had fled, and that Saul and his sons were dead, they forsook their cities and fled, and the Philistines came and dwelt in them. Wow. So you can see the magnitude of the defeat. The men who were watching over the battle realized that no, Saul, his 3 sons, all the men that he sent to the battle had been defeated. And so they had to run for their lives, because even if those who are fighting on the battlefield have been defeated, how much more you that you are waiting for a good news that we have won the battle. So they had to run away, and so the Philistines came over to take over the lands of the Israelites. Verse 8. On the morrow, so that's the next day, when the Philistines came to strip the slain, they found Saul and his 3 sons falling on Mount Gilboa. So they can ask you in the objective questions, where was Saul killed and his 3 sons, or which among these places was Saul and his 3 sons killed? They were killed on Mount Gilboa. You know, normally when there is a battle, during the battle, after the battle is over, the winner would normally go into the enemy's camp and check as to the number of casualties and the people dead. And these are normally even shown in these ancient movies that we normally watch. So the following day, the Philistines then went into the enemy's camp, and they were stripping off the soldiers of Israel who were slain or who had died the previous day. And in the course of the stripping, that is when they came across Saul. That Saul was also in the dead, and his 3 sons were also dead. So this is what they do. Of course, this is what they did, the Philistines. So when they realized that this is Saul, and they cut off his head and stripped off his armor and sent messengers throughout the land of Philistine to carry the good news to their idols and to the people. And so this is what they did to Saul. They cut off the head of Saul. And don't forget that in this, during this period, the trophy of every battle is the head of the king. Okay, and so that is why they cut off the head of Saul. Now they put his armor in the temple of Ashtaroth, and they fastened his body to the wall of Bethshan. So his armor, what he was wearing, was placed in the temple that belonged to a god called Ashtaroth. And then they fastened his body to a wall. So it means that the body was without head. So you can have that. You can imagine that, the body was without head, to the wall of Bethshan. But when the inhabitants of Jabesh Gilead heard what the Philistines had done to Saul, all the valiant men arose and went all night and took the body of Saul and the bodies of his sons from the wall of Bethshan, and they came to Jabesh and burnt them there. And they took their bones and buried them under the tamarisk tree in Jabesh and fasted 7 days. So the inhabitants who were in Jabesh Gilead decided to give Saul a befitting burial. Okay, and so that is what they decided to do. They came at night, took the body, they burnt it, and then the bones were buried under the tamarisk tree in Jabesh Gilead, and also fasted for 7 days. Good. We will look at why the people or the inhabitants of Jabesh Gilead came to take the body of Saul to give it a befitting burial. So let's go and look at the summary, and we shall talk about that. Okay, so now let's take and look at the summary of what we just read from the Bible. So we just read that Saul died for fighting the Philistines, or Saul died in the war between the Israelites and the Philistines. And this could be an objective question, that in which of the following wars did Saul died? Now, in the war, we realize that the Philistines totally defeated the Israelites. So what does that mean is that Israel lost the war totally to the Philistines, all right? Yes. Now, we also established in our reading that the three sons of Saul, Abinadab, Malchishua, and the other one, they all died in Mount Gibeon, okay? Yes. And the three sons of Saul died in Mount Gibeon. And I know you can recall all the three sons that we just read about. Now, we also established that Saul then killed himself after his armor bearer refused to kill him. You also recall that Saul had to take his own life because he was wounded, and his armor bearer, as we saw or as we read, refused to kill him, and so Saul then took his own life. Now, we also read about the Philistines who came the following day, and they came to cut the head of Saul and slipped off his armor. All right. Yes, we also read about that. Then after that, the armor was taken to the temple of their god Ashtaroth. All right. So we also read about the soldiers, or the Philistine soldiers. After cutting Saul's head, they took his armor and then they sent the armor to their temple, the god known as Ashtaroth. All right. And then Saul's body was fastened to the wall of Bethshan. All right. Bethshan. You also recall that the body of Saul was fastened to a wall, and this was a humiliating a defeat. And so they just wanted to make fun of the king Saul, to make sport of him, and that was why the Philistines fastened his body to the walls of Bethshan. Now, the men of Jabesh Gilead in their night went for the body and the three sons and burnt them. So they burnt them, that means they gave them a befitting burial. Now, you recall that, so it means that the Saul's three sons, or the body of Saul's children or sons, were lying there. And so these men who were from Jabesh Gilead decided to take the body and then burnt them and give the bodies a befitting burial, including Saul's body. Now, they took their bones and buried them under the tamarisk tree and fasted for 7 days. Okay, and fasted for 7 days. So after they burnt the body, they then took the bones and then buried the bones under a tamarisk tree and fasted in honor of these people. And so the question that we asked was that, why do you think that these men would do this? Now, you know, even in our traditional setup, when somebody dies, the person has to be given a befitting burial. All right, a burial that will eventually say farewell to the person. So let me give you an example. May his soul rest in peace. When Christian Achu died in the earthquake in Turkey, you saw that it will be a worry if his body was not discovered. All right, and so that would have been a very disgraceful death, because you will not be given a befitting burial. But when we found the body, you saw that people were somehow okay, and now we have buried him, and we know that he's dead, and we have buried him. All right. Had it not been that, we would not know what is happening to him. Especially, let me even give you another example of Castro. Now, we don't know where Castro is. When you mention the name Castro, we don't know whether he's dead or he's still alive. So that is how a befitting burial is. And so that is what the people did. But at this point, at this time, at this period, it was about burning the body and burying the bones. So the question is, why would these men from Gilead decide to do this for Saul and his sons? It is very simple. The men of Gilead gave Saul a befitting burial because Saul had rescued them from a certain cruel king called Nahash. So this was the reason why the men from Gilead decided to give Saul a befitting burial. because Saul had liberated them from a certain cruel king known as Nahash. And so in honor of Saul, they decided to give him a befitting burial. Good. So this will bring an end to our discussion. You can try your hand on this work. Describe the death of King Saul. Let me hear your views in the comments section. And thank you for watching. Have a nice day. Bye-bye.